Hi guys, welcome to another what I read in a month video. I'm going to talk about the books that I read in July. So I read 6.5 books. I say half because I started reading a book and I haven't finished it and I don't know if I will. So 6.5. I read all of these books like in the beginning of July and was having like a really good streak of good books. But it was in the beginning of July and it's now the beginning of August. So I'm not sure how well I'm going to remember everything that I read, but I'll do my best. So the first books I read were by Ali Hazelwood. They were her STEM romance novellas. So there's 3 of them, but they're so short that it's not really 3 separate stories, like they're not as long as a book would be. But I read them in order. So the first one is Under One Roof. So that one is about Mara and Liam. So Mara's supervisor has passed away, and in her will she left her house to Mara, and she moves in and finds out that the house has also been left to her supervisor's like nephew, whose name is Liam, and they're basically forced to live together. It does start with the first chapter is like the end of the story is at the beginning, so you kind of know right from the first chapter that they're going to end up together, but I guess the story that you get told kind of shows how they end up getting together. So they kind of end up living in this house, not liking each other because he is annoyed that this random chick is in her house and she's kind of annoyed that this random guy's in her house and they don't get along. So it's like enemies to lovers, and it was quite satisfying to read. Like the timeline of it felt believable, even though it was quite like a condensed story. I think it would have benefited from being a full-length story because you don't really get a lot of insight into Liam's character until the end, where it's kind of hinted at like the more depth to his character, which I found out when I was reading reviews is actually because he's demisexual, but that's not made super obvious because I didn't realize that until I read the reviews, and I kind of wanted to know more about his backstory when like it started to get uncovered at the end, but then the story just kind of finished. So there was some fun tension between the characters and it seemed genuine rather than some insta love, and that was most of my thoughts on that. So I did give it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and Ali Hazelwood knows how to write a good steamy scene, so if you're looking for recommendations for that, read all of her books. So all of these STEM novella books are about the same friends. So Mara's friends that she talks to online in the book have their own books as well. So the next one is Stuck With You, which is about her friends Sadie and Eric. So as I read these books, they progressively weren't as good as the one before. So I gave this one 4 stars and I gave Under One Roof 5 stars. So basically Sadie and Eric meet and it's like they have an instant connection and they go out on a date and they're like really getting along well together, and then there's a miscommunication where she thinks that his organisation business has stolen the information that she shared on the date for their benefit and like stole one of their clients, and so she like cuts him off. And then so it cuts between like that timeline in the past and then current timeline where they're stuck in an elevator together, and while they're stuck in the elevator they're like forced to talk it out, and it's clear that he's like fully in love with her and didn't mean to do it, and like it was all a miscommunication, which was kind of frustrating. Like all the reviews I read was saying how annoying that was, but I still had a really fun time reading it. It was a bit insta-lovey because they just met for one day and then went on this date and then stopped talking, and then they are stuck in an elevator together for like 1 hour and then they're like, oh my god, we're soulmates. So it was a bit insta-lovey, but it was still pretty cute. I think they had sex on the first date. I don't really remember, but they might have. I think they did because that's why he thinks that she's mad at him, but she's actually mad at him for stealing her business ideas, but he didn't. And then the third book in the little mini series is Below Zero. This was my least favourite one and I gave it 3 stars, and I think it was my least favourite because the character Hannah, I didn't like her at all. she had all this stuff about how she wasn't close to anyone and all she cared about was work, and even her friends, she was like, they're not really my friends, they're just people I sit with, while she was at uni. And I was like, just stop. And then she like can't have a real relationship with anyone because she just likes casual relationships, which is fine, but it never gave an explanation of why she felt like that. So I didn't really like her as a character. She was just a bit robotic to me. Like I didn't get the depth, like, because there was no reasoning explained behind her actions. I didn't really like her. And then the guy that she was interested was Ian. So at uni she had to do a character piece on someone in the field, so she really is obsessed with Mars and wants to be an astronaut on Mars and stuff. So she works, like, she wants to work for NASA, so she does a character piece on him for school, and then they get to know each other and like they kind of have a thing, but she's like, no, I can't be in a relationship, so they kind of stay away from each other. And then she ends up working for NASA and he is her boss, and she wants to go on this expedition like somewhere really cold, like Iceland or something, and he keeps trying to stop her project from going forward because he thinks it's dangerous. So it's basically another miscommunication, and obviously he was right, because she ends up in like a life-threatening situation because her supervisor sent her out in bad weather with this robot thing that's supposed to be testing to see if it can be used on Mars or something. So she's like in this life or death situation, and he shows up and rescues her out of nowhere, and she's like, why are you saving me, like we hate each other. But it's actually because he's in love with her, and that's why he tried to stop her project from going forward. So all of it is a miscommunication, which is really annoying. And then I think the story would have been better if it like drew out the life and death situation in the ice a bit more, but she's literally like in a hole in the ice, unable to get out, and then he rescues her, and then they're like out of that situation really quickly because he like carries her through the snow, and then they end up on a boat somewhere, and like the whole thing is just over very quickly, whereas I feel like it could have been drawn out and been a bit more dramatic. But then they basically just end up in real life, and then she gives in and decides to have a relationship with him, even though she's all, I don't take people and I don't love people kind of attitude. The thing that makes it really weird is they have sex at the very end, and he compares her body to Mars and is speaking about like the hills in Mars being similar to her body, and it's just weird. Like I read the reviews before I read the book, and I was like, surely it can't be that bad, but I read it and it's really weird. So it's definitely the worst out of the three. I would recommend reading them because I did have a fun time, but the third one is a bit like, what is happening? And then the next book I read was My Mechanical Romance by Alexine Farrell Fullmoth, who is also the author of The Atlas Six, but under her pen name, I think Olivia Black or Blackie. So My Chemical Romance is a romance set during high school between Belle and Mateo. So it had dual POV, which I think worked okay because I actually quite liked Mateo, and I think having his POV makes him more likable, whereas if you just saw him from her POV he might have seemed a bit douchey. But she's basically started a new school after her parents have gotten a divorce, and it's like a really fancy school. So Mateo is the popular guy for being nerdy, like it's that kind of popular school, and he's like the smartest in all of his classes, and he is the captain of the robotics team, and one of her teachers makes her join the robotics team to kind of give her some direction because she's really smart, but she's one of those kids who doesn't know what to do with her life. So she joins the robotics team, and it kind of touches on sexism within STEM and within like stuff like robotics, which I guess is cool but not really fun to read about. It's more of like something challenging to read about, so it depends what you're looking for in a book. But it was cute, like they kind of went from enemies to being friends to dating, but they kind of go from friends to dating without like any, it was very anticlimactic, so I almost like didn't care when they got together because it was so casual, like it didn't feel like a really big deal. And then like dating for a bit and it's really cute, but then they break up because it's really stupid, because she applies to get into MIT and she doesn't get into MIT, and she's like, I can't hold him back, I'm going to break up with him and not tell him why. And then they go back to being enemies, and it just felt dumb. But I guess they're teenagers, so maybe that's realistic. And then they go to a robotics competition and he gets really sick, so she kind of has to take over and proves to everyone that, you know, women can do robotics too and they're not idiots. Which you didn't think would have to prove to people, but apparently it does. And then her parents also come to the competition because there's like a side plot about their family dynamics, which I think I actually did enjoy because it was realistic and she wasn't like creepy close with her parents like in another book that I'll talk about later. She wasn't like creepy close to her parents, like it was believable, the relationships that she had with her parents, so I really liked that dynamic and that addition to the story. So in the end I gave that 4 stars, so I would recommend. And I like books that have a bit of like intelligence to the plot, like that's why I like Ali Hazelwood's books. And there was a lot of robotics jargon that like went completely over my head, but it was believable, so I liked that. It seemed plausible to me, the stuff that they were doing with their robot. And then the next book I read was the best book I read all month, and maybe the best book I've read like in a really long time. It was called See You Yesterday by Rachel Solomon. So I gave this 5 stars because it was so good. It was about Barrett and Miles. So Barrett has just started university. She's looking to like make a fresh start because high school was horrible for her. I did think it was a little bit implausible because her best friend in the whole world is her mum, and she didn't have any friends from high school, which I think is kind of just lazy writing when people don't have a lot of friends. But she's just started university or college, and she's in a dorm, and she has a terrible first day pretty much. Like she ends up burning down a frat house, and then she wakes up the next day and it's the same day. So she's basically in this groundhog situation, and pretty soon she figures out that this other guy Miles has been trapped in this Groundhog Day as well, but for like 60 days or something so far, and it's only been one for her. So it's kind of them like figuring out this thing together, and it's so cute and enjoyable. And in the beginning they're like rivals and being like, I want to figure it out this way, and the other guy's like, I want to figure it out this way, and they kind of like become closer friends throughout it, and then they get together and they fall in love, and it's so sweet. And like the timeline is pretty plausible, like it is kind of like falling in love over a month seems kind of fast, but I guess you're living the same day over and over and always hanging out with the same person, so kind of believable. But it was so sweet, and they're like so in love, and then they figure out how to fix it. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but if you want to read this book, don't read any reviews, don't listen to anyone talk about it, just read it. Like it's great reading it not knowing what's going to happen or how they fix the problem or how they fall in love. Like you just need to read it without knowing anything, because it's such a sweet book. And then they figure out how to break the time loop, and he doesn't remember her, and you're like, what, how is the book going to end like this? But she actually like refreshes his memory and he remembers her, and it's really sweet, and I loved this book. So please read See You Yesterday because it's adorable. The next book I read was also by Rachel Solomon, because a couple months ago I read Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, which was also by her, and I enjoyed that, although I think See You Yesterday is way better, because Today, Tonight, Tomorrow happens over one night of these two kids falling in love, and I just don't find things that happen within one day plausible, because you can't actually change that much as a person over one night. So I think See You Yesterday was like way better than Today, Tonight, Tomorrow. And then I read We Can't Keep Meeting Like This by her as well. I didn't like it as much as her other books at all. It was about Quinn, who is a huge cynic. She has OCD, which is cool for representation for OCD. I personally don't have OCD, so I don't know how good the representation was, but I enjoyed that aspect of it. Like I think it was good to include, I guess. And then she, in the previous year, was in love with this guy, her best friend called Tarek, who is a hopeless romantic, and basically they had a huge miscommunication. He tried to declare his love for her, but she didn't know what was happening, because he like does these huge declarations of love, for the girls that he likes, and she thinks that he's doing it for someone else, but he's actually doing it for her. And then she sends him a letter while he's off at college because he's a year older than her, and then he never replies to her email declaring her love for him, and his reason for not responding I don't think is good enough. He says that it's because he was really struggling at college, but it's like, it's not hard to just, I don't know, for someone to put their heart all the way out there like that, and then you're like, oh, I was just struggling, I couldn't say anything. Like, I just don't think his excuse for not responding was good enough. So they meet up again because both of their families are like in the wedding planning business. Quinn's parents are like really intense about it, and their business is like their family business, but Quinn doesn't actually want to be a part of it, but doesn't know how to tell them that. And the thing that really grated on me with this book was her relationship with her family, because I'm like, if a teenager doesn't like their parents, they tell their parents to leave them alone, but she can't do that, and she has like all this trauma, I guess you would say, from when her parents split up when she was 7, never gave her an explanation and got back together. So like, she doesn't believe in relationships, and she's always worried that her parents are going to break up, and then also can't confront them about how she doesn't want to be in the wedding planning business. And that whole plot line, she just really frustrated me, and I was like, just stop. But I get, like, it all gets sorted in the end, but I just thought it was dumb, and it creates all this relationship drama with her and Tarek, because she's like, oh, we can be together but we're not actually dating, and like, he asks to be her boyfriend and she's like, oh, I don't do relationships, because she doesn't believe in love. And he's just like a lovely, sweet, caring boyfriend the whole time, and gets treated like shit by her and just puts up with it until they do get in a fight and he breaks up with her for how she's treating him, which I think is fair enough. There was a cameo in it from the characters in Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, so if you read Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, you might appreciate that there's a little cameo from Adam and whatever the girl's name is in that book. In the end, she does reconciliate with her family and like sorts out not wanting to be in the wedding business, and she apologizes to Tarek and they get back together, and it's all fine. I did read some reviews that said that there were some issues with Muslim representation because Tarek is Muslim but the author isn't Muslim. I don't know anything about that, but it is something to consider maybe about the book. I don't really know, but it was just mentioned in some of the reviews that it maybe isn't the greatest representation. And then the next book I started reading was called Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. So I started reading this and I think I got like maybe halfway through before I just got distracted by doing other things, and I don't know if I'll go back to reading it because I didn't really feel any suspense in it. It was about, I didn't write the characters' names down, but it was about this girl who is like known to be a thief. She has a Dajan, I don't know how to pronounce that, as her friend, and together they like find magical items and then sell them. So she's like this magic thief that's selling these items to people. That's her life, and then she gets pulled into the royal family who are actually trying to kill all of the Dajan because they believe that they're evil and want their power and stuff. So she gets pulled into that, and I don't know, I think the reason why I didn't like this is because it's dual POV, and I think there would be a lot more suspense in it if it was only one of the main characters' POVs, because I think the guy's name is Malik, but I'm not sure. When you have both, it just gives away everything that you could be wondering about, and there's something that could be a major plot twist, like the main guy is forced to masquerade as his brother who wants to kill all Dajan. He doesn't want to kill them all, but he has to masquerade as his brother on this journey across the desert with the main girl. So the main girl thinks it's his brother, but it would actually be him the whole time, and they're kind of already friends, but he wouldn't be able to tell her that because he's pretending to be his brother. And I think if it was just a girl's perspective, that would be like a huge plot twist to find out that this guy was someone else the whole time. But because you know that straight from the get-go, it just seemed like it couldn't be that good. So I kind of stopped reading it, and I don't think I'll go back to it. So, but the 6 books that I did read in July felt very successful. I felt like it was a good reading month. See You Yesterday was by far the best book that I read, so you should definitely go read it. It's very good. And I guess those are all my book opinions for today. Thank you for watching my video. See you next time.